Hey guys, welcome back to Andy's Dinosaur Reviews, and today we have the final, or at least so far anyway, of the brand new Toymonster International Captivz Supersized figures. We've got ourselves the Spinosaurus contained within this egg. This is the only one that I wasn't able to acquire so far, but one of my good friends, Matthew, had stepped up and mentioned that he had an extra and offered it up to me, and here we are. So, thank you very much to him, and again, this looks to be a pretty cool figure. I'm actually a massive fan of the supersized figures. I think they really are great. I always have liked them since they introduced them with the Dominion line, and, you know, still loving the fact that they're producing these into the Jurassic Park line, the 30th anniversary Jurassic Park line. So once you pop the egg open, you can see that you've got all sorts of fun stuff contained within. The very first thing is, actually, there's two sets of stickers in here. Sometimes they do that, where they just give you extra stickers, but they are the same stickers. You can see that we've got some really nice classic Jurassic Park stickers here that I just completely love. Really love that Jurassic Park background as well. Incredible work on the part of Toymonster International with this entire 30th anniversary Jurassic Park line. And even cooler than those stickers, we've got the card, and you can see the card shows off a beautiful image of the Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus right there, as it's actually looking up there, checking out the airplane as it flies by. So this might be kind of like a precursor to the moment that the Spinosaurus kind of heads over and starts attacking everybody, including the airplane itself. And again, incredible image right there. And we also have a shot here of the figure here on the back of the card, as well as some information. And again, that beautiful backdrop there with the Jurassic Park colors. Then you've also got the little slip in here that shows you the dinosaurs included in the line. If I can open this up. So here we are. We've got the supersized figures, one of which is the T-Rex we've already reviewed. The next one is the Spinosaurus, which we are currently in the process of reviewing. And then we have the Triceratops, which we also have reviewed already. And then here on the back, you can see information as far as playing the game and everything. The Captivz game that they've had going on for quite a while, I think, since these figures were actually introduced. I've never tried to play it yet, though. One of these days I will. And then contained within the egg are the pieces of your dinosaur. You can see we've got prehistoric sand. We also have amber gel. And then we also have InGen slime. And each comes in its own individual package. And, of course, each piece of these includes a piece of the dinosaur. Sometimes you can kind of get a look at it. So there you can see the tail is contained within that gel, and then in the sand we'll probably have the head. It's usually how it works out, where we have the head, but you can't really see it right now. It's hidden pretty well. So I'm going to go ahead, excavate these pieces from these sections, and we'll be right back with the figure complete. So here is the supersized Spinosaurus, and man, is that ever a nice looking figure. Like, overall, when it comes to the paint jobs of the three newest supersized figures, I have to hand it to the Spinosaurus. It definitely has the best paint job as far as, like, well, let's see if it stands. I don't know if it's going to. But it has the best paint job as far as, like, being nice and careful with it. Like, the Rex had a really nice paint job, but it was kind of erratic as far as the way it was sort of placed. Like, it wasn't super careful, whereas with the Spinosaurus, you could see it's very different. The paint job looks really nice, really careful, really specific as far as the placement of the paint. It does, however, interestingly enough, have a paint job that doesn't exactly look like the Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus, but very similar. It has more of like a brownish color scheme, which the Spino in Jurassic Park 3 does in some views have somewhat of a brownish look. Mostly when you look at the CGI model, it had kind of like a brownish sort of appearance to it. But this one has, again, a little bit of a darker brownish coloration than, or I guess in some spots, maybe even a lighter brown, more so than what we see in Jurassic Park 3, but they did capture the overall design kind of nicely, you know, with the white coming down. It doesn't exactly run down into the thigh, it kind of runs down into the stomach and then designs back, but it looks really cool, and they definitely did a very good job on the actual application of the paint. And one thing that I think is pretty neat about this, and it's something that I didn't really pick up on prior when it comes to the previous Spinosaurus releases, because this does look to be the same sculpt as far as the Spinosaurus goes compared to previously released versions, but I think this is more based on the actual CGI model more so than the animatronic, which is very interesting because until now, we've only ever had a model of the CGI version from W Dragon, and obviously you can see mostly the thing that gives it away to me is the shape of the head and the snout specifically. It doesn't have that kind of hook in the jaw and stuff, and has a little bit of just a unique looking appearance, which I think much more closely resembles the CGI version of the Spinosaurus in Jurassic Park 3. So I think that actually might be what this is meant to be, which is really quite cool, actually. But we're going to go ahead and jump to a closer look at this Spinosaurus right now. So, I did state that this is the same sculpt, or at least I believe it's the same sculpt of the previously released Spinosaurus. Now, this was actually technically released in a different paint variant, I think maybe more Jurassic Park 3-ish, but I'm not positive, in a supersized version for the Dominion line, but it was such a small run until like a few weeks ago, I never even knew it existed, and I don't believe it ever came anywhere close to the United States because I never saw any of the supersized figures here until now. But in fact, the only place I know of that actually had that figure was Spain, and I am still trying to get my hands on one, but I don't think it's going to happen at this point. But regardless, the sculpt is generally the same to the standard version of the Spinosaurus. Now, if we bring one of those up, I have the kind of more rare metallic sort of version because I couldn't find the other ones currently because I think I have them in a box somewhere. But you can see that the sculpt primarily is the same, the head shape is the same, the positioning of the limbs and everything's all the same except the tail. The tail is definitely new, so we do have an updated tail for the Spinosaurus. Previously, it had a really strong curve to it. It still has a curve, but obviously nowhere near as strong. And honestly, I like this tail a lot better than the older one. So that means that basically we don't really need to go over the sculpt because the sculpt is almost the entire same thing as what we had before, except for the tail, which does look really nice. Honestly, I think the tail looks way better on this one than the older one did. But what we're going to go over would be the paint application. So you can see up here in the face, we have a really nice light brown, but we've also got a nice darker brown wash applied to it. And that's one thing that Toymonster International can be commended for continuously, is the fact that they always put a lot of work into the paint jobs of their figures, even when they're, mini figures. Even though this is the supersized version, it's still pretty much a mini figure, and it always impresses me how much work they put into the actual paint jobs of their figures. You can see the eye is painted with a green, similar to what we actually do see on the Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus. You start to see a darker brown pick up right there in the eye socket area, run back there along the back of the head. That as well is kind of applied with almost like a watered down version of the paint, so it sort of applies itself where you can kind of see like some of the lighter brown creeping through. We also have sort of like some light off-white or like light grayish tones for the lower jaw, some more of that lighter brown coming down here. The teeth are all sculpted individually for the most part, which you can see, and they're all painted with a nice whitish tone. We also have kind of like a pinkish tone there for the inside of the mouth of the Spinosaurus, and you can see the paintwork looks pretty darn nice over here, just like it did on the initial side. The eyes are fairly nicely placed overall. This side has a slight, very, very, very slight amount of sloppiness to the eye paint, but that's really about it. You can see as we begin to move down through the course of the neck, we have that lighter tone pick up and kind of stripe down, similar to what we do see on a Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus. You can see a little bit more of that brownish tone, then you have that off-white here on the underside. Yet again, the off-white is applied with kind of like a watered down, almost wash-like version of the paint where it allows some of the, again, lighter tones to creep through, just making it have a really realistic looking appearance, I think. As you continue to move down through the course of the body, you have that darker brown running along the top, the lighter brown in the center, and then that lighter tone, that off-white for the lower part of the body, and then that white stripe continues to run down, makes a nice curve here for the thigh, and you can see that we continue to have that white moving down there, kind of stripes into the leg. Then we have the brown, the darker brown that is, that stripes into the leg, and then we have the lighter brown as well. And again, the paintwork with the kind of like watered down version of the paint that they're using really allows the sculpt and detail to shine on the figure. Look at how nice those scales pop as you move down the course of the leg. Really smooth coloration as well. And then the foot sculpt also has that same style, again, of like almost like a wash-like paint application. One thing that I feel like is really weird about these figures that I didn't pick up on until fairly recently is the fact that the toes are all almost like raptor feet, because you can see that the foot sculpt of the Spinosaurus here has kind of like that, almost like a sickle claw going on over here. I mean, the toe's obviously smaller, so it doesn't resemble a sickle claw actually, but like if you look at it, that toe is just like really quite further back than the others, back further than it should be, which almost gives it like somewhat of a raptor type of a look. But you can see again that we have a nice light tone for the arm as well, a little hint of that brownish wash on the hands as well, and you can see that the nails aren't actually painted, but it looks good for what it is. And again, on something like this, a minifigure, we already have far exceeded the expectations for what you would get paint-wise. So the fact that we're missing nail paint isn't the end of the world. You can also see that we have a different variation of a brown that kind of leads up and over the top of the sail. You also have a sort of like an off-white with some bluish tones there in the middle of the sail, and then you have kind of like a stripe that moves through the sail as well. And then as you lead out, you continue to have that same style of paintwork, same style of coloration leading out onto the tail, and it really does look fantastic. Again, as far as the paint application goes, this is probably the best Toymonster International figure that I have when it comes to a paint job, because everything just looks so good on it, and it's all very precise and everything as far as the application of the paint. They've just done a phenomenal job, even if it doesn't match perfectly to the tones of color you see on the Spinosaurus in Jurassic Park 3. The overall application of the paint on it looks really, really good. And even though the Spino, again, does have somewhat of a brownish look, it's just not exactly the same tones of color that we have here. The design of the overall body isn't exactly the same, but the actual paint application, again, really does look fantastic on this. As far as a size goes for the Spinosaurus, for a length, if you go from the tip of the tail to the snout, I would say about 5 3/4 inches, actually maybe close to 6 inches, very close, or about 15 centimeters, or maybe even a little over 15 centimeters. But for a height, the highest point probably would be the sail, about 2.5 inches, maybe approaching 2 3/4, or around 6.5 centimeters, approaching 7. For a size comparison, there is the supersized Spino with the supersized T-Rex, and you can see again how cool they look next to each other. Definitely a really neat companion piece, even if the, if Rexy doesn't appear with the Spino, it still is a really cool companion piece here to have. But for another comparison, there is the absolutely gigantic supersized Triceratops next to the Spinosaurus. The Spinosaurus almost looks dwarfed now next to that Triceratops. But those are the only two supersized figures that we have in this line for the 30th anniversary Jurassic Park Captivz. I don't feel like we really need to do very many size comparisons or anything, because we've done so many already when it comes to these supersized figures, and they usually fall right in the same similar size range. But one thing that we can do is show off the fact that with the pop and lock aspect of these figures, it kind of gives you articulation in a way, so you can kind of move the head and stuff and create some sort of articulation for the model. You also have the tail, but that's not really a very big deal. Like, who would want to swivel the tail? But that does give you some slight articulation in a way with the figure, because you have to pop those pieces in. And again, just a little extra fun, I think, for the figure. So this brand new Toymonster International Jurassic Park 30th Anniversary Supersized Captivz Spinosaurus, boy, that was quite a bit to say, is really nice, honestly. This is probably my favorite supersized figure from the Captivz line so far. This is my 6th, I believe, as far as these supersized figures go, and just, it really is a nice looking figure as a whole. The sculpt is great, it's really nice, very highly detailed. I used to say that it's not maybe your most perfect, accurate interpretation of a Jurassic Park 3 Spino, but after actually, kind of taking a look at it and watching Jurassic Park 3 recently, I can say that it actually does look pretty darn nice and fairly close to the Spino from the film, but it looks more like the CGI version as opposed to the animatronic version, and that's something that for some reason I just didn't pick up on previously with this figure, and I think that is really cool. And again, fine detail-wise, overall, it looks really, really nice. The paint job, though, is my favorite part of the figure. I love the actual application of the paint. I love the tones of color they've used. Even if it doesn't perfectly replicate a Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus, it still looks really cool, and the application of the paint is so impressive for something like this, like extremely impressive, way more impressive than most Jurassic Park figures that we get from any company, and that is a huge, huge plus for this release. It's all very nicely applied, very smooth as far as the application. They've done a good job of painting the figure with kind of like wash-like paints where it really clings to the figure in a realistic way. and meshes with the other colors perfectly. I do also like the fact that we have a newly sculpted tail for the figure, because I wasn't the biggest fan of the curved tail that we had previously. Definitely like this tail a lot more. So, as a whole, this is an incredibly awesome release from Toymonster International, and one that I definitely recommend picking up. So, head to your local Walmart. Hopefully you'll be able to find some of these supersized eggs there. My Walmart had quite a few of them, but unfortunately it didn't contain the Spinosaurus in any of the ones that I acquired. So, luckily my good buddy Matt stepped up and helped me to get one here, because, again, it ended up being probably my favorite of all of these supersized figures. So make sure you check your local Walmart, and make sure you also like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next review. Thanks for watching.